an architecture media podcast, produced on Bunawurrung country.
Welcome to Design Speaks Weekly, a podcast that explores the biggest stories in Australian architecture and design. I'm your host, Georgia Burks, and today I'm joined by Emma Williamson, Western Australia's government architect. We talk about what makes a good leader in the world of architecture. But first, here's the latest news headlines from Architecture AU.
In the news this week, the Queensland State Government has released a draft legacy plan that maps a long-term vision for the Victoria Park precinct following the Brisbane 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games. Public consultation on the plan, which opened yesterday, closes in September. And the winning and commended projects in the Architecture AU Award for Social Impact have been announced, with truth-telling at Wyballina by Taylor and Hines Architects with the Aboriginal Land Council of Tasmania, named the overall winner. Comprising a new ablutions building and a renewed colonial homestead on a historically significant Flinders Island site, the project offers Palawa people a means to gather, remember, care for and speak truth on country. For the full awards results and for more news, visit architectureau.com. I'm Lucia Amies. It's Tuesday, August 4.
Emma Williamson has held leadership roles across architectural practice and public policy. From her time as partner at the Fulcrum Agency to her current role as government architect for Western Australia, she has been driven to improve the quality of the built environment and the culture of the profession. In this episode, Emma shares her approach to leadership and discusses the behaviours and cultures that lead to designers creating their best work. Hello, Emma, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Georgia. Thanks for having me.
Emma, throughout your career, you've demonstrated that there are many ways to lead, whether it be in architectural practice, education, or governance. Looking back across those different roles, has your understanding of what it takes to be a good leader changed, or have the fundamentals always remained the same?
That is a good question. And I think when you asked me if I would like to have a chat about this issue of leadership, I actually at first was wondering whether it was about me. Was I really a leader, or is it about the leaders that I like and look up to and admire? And I think it's a little bit of both. And maybe one of the things that has remained the same for me, if I think of myself as a leader, is I have always, for whatever reason, felt that I could or should have an opinion about something. That doesn't mean that mine was the only opinion, but I wasn't afraid or haven't been afraid of taking a position after I've thought about something. And I think that is a defining characteristic of a leader. There was a stage when Curtin and I had Coda Studio where we wanted to change and be really intentional with our practice. And we were encouraged by some mentors at the time to really be clear about what our values were and what the proposition was in the creation of this practice. And that was a game changer. And in that process, I remember actually I was asked to do the kind of graduate address for the architecture students at Curtin. And I articulated these 4 ideas about being joyful, being generous, being useful, and being stealthy. And we did attach those to our practice. But since then, I've had a couple of changes, and those things have just kept coming with me. And so I think there may be more values that underpin who I am as a person and allow me to be a leader because I can talk to the importance of those things. I've recently added one more. Curiosity, or be curious, because I do actually think that's a really important part of being a leader. It's not about having the only idea or it being about the individual. It's actually being curious about the context that you're working in and what's happening, and being able to see where there are opportunities and ideas that aren't necessarily your own.
I love that addition of curiosity, Emma, because I think when you're speaking about taking shape of an opinion and having an opinion, that curiosity also allows you to change your opinion, like the more that you get informed. The question I want to sort of lead on with this is that leaders ultimately shape the culture around them. And we also know that when you surround yourself with yes people, critical thinking, trust, and innovative solutions can be diminished. And in your role as government architect, how do you create an environment where your team feels safe either having an opinion or challenging your ideas or offering a different perspective?
I mean, actually, weirdly, you've tapped on into one of the biggest challenges of my job. The first year, the first day, the first week, the first year was just so different from any other reality that I'd had before. And part of having an opinion for me is somebody challenging my opinion so that then we can have a conversation and work out. And I just couldn't get that traction because there was such a kind of hierarchical difference in the way that this environment operates. And so it actually did take a little while to, I think, build trust, to really get people to understand a different way of working in terms of what I wanted, but also building up a team. So, since I've come into the role, my team's expanded quite a lot. So there's been an opportunity to bring more of that into the mix as we've become bigger. A really key part of that is that safe environment. And I think the thing about good leadership is being able to share the successes, like that's everybody's success, but being absolutely clear that if the shit hits the fan, I take responsibility. Because that is true. Like, really, the buck stops with me. If we're talking about me as a leader in this situation, I am then saying to my team, I trust you in this moment. I also take responsibility if there's an error along the way. This is not to trip you up. This is, about the way we can work together. And that has to come with that capacity to also be available if there's issues. It's not just casting somebody out and hoping that they get it right. I think it's about being decisive as well. Like, you can't sort of operate in indecision as a leader. You have to be able to say, okay, I've heard these things. What about this is the path we're going to go? At a certain point, you've got to make a decision. You can be as curious and get as many opinions, but at a certain point, a decision has to be made. And sometimes the decision will not be the right decision. And that can be a consequence of all sorts of things. And then it's just the capacity to take people. So really, the communication all the way along is just so key to I think, building up a team that is able to operate in an environment which is dynamic. I think that is, that's healthy. I think that there are plenty of, you think about, tech and startups, like those, that has kind of leadership, which is that's go, 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 and that things are designed to break, or, medical risk. Like, there's lots of things that require going right the way to the edge or failing in order to prove something. Our architecture isn't like that, in the sense that I think architects are very well trained to think and test for failure, but you need to kind of make a decision just at the edge of that to make sure that it's sort of working. And I think a leader plays a key role in that.
Have you ever heard the saying, there's no need to make the right decision, just make the decision right? Where it's like, stop wasting time trying to figure out the right decision, but actually make the decision, and then whatever the circumstances are after that, you just make it work.
Yeah, I think that for me probably defines I have spent the majority of my working life working with Curtin, my husband. So this role I'm in now obviously is a departure from that. But in both our personal life and professional life, I think that very much typifies. It's like, okay, let's just make this is a decision, and then let's move forward and we'll just deal with the consequences of the decision. Hoping that most of them are going to be positive, but accepting that some of them won't be. And I think that is really, I mean, if you think about that at the scale of an individual project, let's say, like, it's not going to be the only project. So just make a decision, keep the machine moving. So for me, that's an important part of just the energy that I bring means I can't sit for a long time in indecision.
I am with you on that, Emma, very much so. I can't stay stagnant. Otherwise, nothing changes. And as a profession, we understand that architects in practice do have very little agency when it comes to making significant structural or systemic change. How can architects use their creative problem-solving skills to implement and encourage incremental change within their sphere of influence?
I think that the sphere of influence is a really important starting point, because I think we are not in the kind of world changing, solving the big world wicked problems business. So that's a starting point. But I also think that there are so many people who have qualifications in architecture that sit in the broader kind of context and industry in which we're working, that have a sphere of influence that is really important to being able to deliver good projects. And I always feel that it would be great if we could find a way to really make those people feel valued and validated by the profession, because there is that sense. I always think about that, when you fill in the form, when you're coming back in from overseas and they ask you what your profession is. And for lots of people who are not practicing architecture, there's that moment of like, well, what am I? Or I'm, I don't know, I'm a project manager because I can't say that I'm an architect, or I can't, And I think that the people actually individually do all have agency, and then collectively, that's a lot. It's like superannuation funds, right? Everyone's got a little bit, and collectively could be a pretty powerful tool for change. And I think that if we think about all of the agents who are people who understand design because they've come through architectural training, and some of them have worked as architects and then decided to go in a different path, that is an incredible network that can help the passage of a project. And I think if we could dial that up, I think we could amplify our influence. Yeah, and I think that the sphere of influence can also be increased if maybe we had people who were not necessarily architects talking about how good architects are, but we had ways of describing projects. We're operating in a context where we're a little bit up against it. We've got visual, like we've got Instagram, we've got home renovation programs and grand designs, all these sorts of things are kind of an appetite that for people to consume information around really nice houses, which is just completely sort of tone deaf to the context that we're living in, and also the issues that we could be contributing in a way. And that is hard, because it isn't, how do you find space to speak about the value that we bring to a project? And yeah, I often come back to this point that I think it would be great if other people were talking about it, not architects.
I agree with that, Emma, and I think I can sort of slowly see snippets happening across Australia through these sort of almost like ground up initiatives, or individuals talking about what the value of design is, good design is. And I think, as you said, even those who aren't registered architects can be contributing to that in their daily conversations, perhaps.
Yeah.
Maybe just with their aunties, or I don't know,
That's right.
could be anything. It could be really casual and have quite a good impact.
Yeah.
Bringing it back to graduates as well, Emma, in an essay on leadership that you wrote for Parler back in 2017, you said, I did my research, okay?
Yes, what did I say, Georgia?
Emma, to quote, you said, "It seems that often our career trajectories are set early and rely on the right combination of ambition, circumstance, and support." Almost 10 years on, do you still believe that is the case? And if so, what behaviours would you encourage young professionals to start practicing today?
I would agree with that comment. I think that it is certainly true that ambition, circumstance, and support, that's what I said, didn't I? I think that is true. And so what can you do in the early stages of your career? I think you can, well, the ambition, that's the energy that you bring. So that's an individual pursuit. The circumstances, I think, really have to do with valuing what you bring and not putting up with a less than ideal circumstance for too long. And that can be very much impacted by the economic circumstance. I mean, there's times when there's just not a lot of work around and choices are limited, but when there's a little bit more choice, I think the capacity to be decisive in that moment and make sure that the place where you're working, it aligns with your values. Overall, as a human, I think an ideal situation is when you're the same person at work as you are when you're not at work, that you don't have to put on a sort of costume because there's a misalignment between those two worlds. And I think that that also ties into the way that we can be leaders, if we're bringing it back to that. As far as the support, and I guess it connects with the circumstances, I think that one of the things that has exhausted me at times, but actually has been incredible in terms of the kind of circumstances and opportunities I've had, is that I've tended to be more of a yes person than a no person, even though sometimes I start a year thinking this year is a no year, I'm too busy. And so when somebody asks me, will I write an article for Parler or will I do whatever, my first thought is like, I don't think I can do that because I don't have the skills to do it, or, I don't have the time, or, why would they ask me? Why wouldn't they ask someone else? Including when you asked me to do this podcast. And then I think, actually, why don't I just say yes in this moment? Because somebody else has asked me to do it, and I'll just try and back myself and write the article or whatever it is. And then it opens another door to another opportunity. And I guess that goes to this issue of support, because eventually what was created, and that was not something that I had imagined, was just an unbelievably diverse national network of support. And that has been a gift at a personal level, beautiful friends, but also professionally has meant that there is ways forward, ways of people to talk to, or opportunities that arise. And I think that is within the reach of every person. That isn't something that is unique to me at all. And so taking those opportunities, if it's a point where you're not working full time, still engaging in your professional life and contributing. And I think that that's where the kind of having an opinion, it's actually pretty good. Like, it doesn't matter if not everyone doesn't have to agree with you, but to take a position and feel that you want to talk about something, I think it's a good starting point.
I think that's such a good umbrella for everything you've sort of discussed in this, Emma, like having an opinion, being decisive, all sort of links back to, saying yes and leaning into those opportunities, sharing your opinion, and also then having an opinion and being decisive about what your values are and where you should be positioned or in your profession, sort of thing. So I can see the thread all kind of coming together. Emma, you may have answered this already, but to conclude our episode, I'd love to ask you, what is a piece of advice that you find yourself returning to time and time again?
Well, before I do, I just want to say on the decision, decisiveness and having an opinion, I don't think you need to be the loudest voice in the room to do all of those things. I think those things, I just want to be clear. Like, it's not about going in, charging and everyone listen to me. It's about contributing and listening. Like that's a two-way, darling. What I would say about this piece of advice that I keep going back to, when I was little, I remember I had a fight with a friend in primary school, and my mum, I think the friend wasn't really a friend. I think she was actually pretty mean to me. And my mum said to me,
A frenemy.
a friend of me, okay. And she said, you don't have to, the thing about this, Emma, is you don't have to get even straight away. Like, over time, that person will learn the lesson, and you don't have to be the one that sort of dispenses the justice in this moment or whatever it is. And I thought that was a pretty solid piece of advice. And I think it links not directly with how I would, I guess, how I operate now as an adult, but in that I think that there is a long tail, like the impact that you might make as a leader may be completely invisible, but 5 years later, something pops up, or you may have someone who's worked in your practice or as your colleague, or you may have taught someone at uni, and the impact of your leadership in that moment may have a profound effect on that person. And it isn't about being the leader. It's about, in those moments, showing the qualities of leadership. And for me, that's probably the most important thing, because I think it connects in with this idea of incremental change or incremental improvement, is that these are small things that add up to be hopefully big things when we can be generous and curious and considerate of lots of voices and find a way forward.
I think that is a fantastic bit of advice to share, Emma. You're in it for the long game, or leaders should be in it for the long game. So that's my takeaway, and plenty of other takeaways today too. Thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast.
Thanks, Georgia. Always love chatting to you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. If you're enjoying this podcast, be sure to subscribe, share, or leave a rating. I'm Georgia Burks, and this has been Design Speaks Weekly. Design Speaks Weekly is produced on Boonwurrung Country. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture.